Welcome to part 5 of Raising an Entrepreneur, an 8-part series on what we can do to help our young people become happy, creative, passionate problem solvers. Let's roll this rock. Entrepreneurs are unique. They embrace the chance to overcome obstacles, solve problems, make the world a better place, and dictate their lives on their own terms while they take on risk. These are their stories. My name is Aaron Stewart, and I have been researching and living entrepreneurship for the past 30 years. And I now welcome you to the Little Black Couch, a journey in entrepreneurship. Hello, everyone. Aaron Stewart from the Little Black Couch. I appreciate you very much being here for part 5 of our series on raising an entrepreneur. It has been fun to do this research. It has been fun to review not only everything that's out there, but all the stuff that I got to learn as a child and all the stuff that we are attempting to help our own children with, along with all the really cool research that's been done. It's been a fascinating and rewarding project, and I am excited to get into part 5. I must be honest in that yesterday I actually recorded this show, but it did not go well. There were some technical issues. I had made some changes to the setup in here to make recording it a little easier for me, and in the melee of all of that, I forgot to plug back in the microphone, so it turned out to not record, and that did not work out well. But it gave me an opportunity to go back through my notes, review them last night, go back through the research, think about it a little bit more, sort of reorganize what we'll talk about today, and then change the remaining 3 shows to address some other issues, probably more in depth than I was going to, but this show sort of flushed that all out for me, and the going through it one time live helped me sort of clear my head a little bit, and so I'm grateful. I'm really grateful for the opportunity. It's definitely one of those situations where a problem became a great advantage, which is very much the life of an entrepreneur. So thank you. Here we go. Let's get into this one. So this particular lesson now I'm calling Healthy Self-Image, Fostering Trust, and Enhancing Connection. A lot of what we talked about the previous show on part 4 was about making sure that our children understand that failure is a positive thing, that without trying, they're not going to really accomplish much in their life, but they should never feel like they haven't accomplished a ton already. And one way to kind of look at this, it's one of the most fascinating things you'll see in research, is that there have been so many scientists and so many research projects on trying to figure out what goes on in a little baby toddler's mind as they're learning to walk, because walking is such a difficult activity to master that there has to be some really fascinating, wonderful things going on. Obviously, we've touched on some of those being, encouragement. But researchers have also shown, and a lot of, we've heard for a number of years, hundreds of years, that monks have told us that if you give them a child for the first 7 years, they will show you the man. Essentially meaning that those first 7 years are so important in teaching a young child on how they will live the rest of their lives that we need to be careful there. Research has showed us that these first 7 years, a child's brain is in the state of what has been termed theta, which is a state of the brain where learning happens from a very calm place where there's not a lot of judgment, where they are observing and watching and listening and just sort of taking it all in. Unfortunately, fortunately and unfortunately, there's no filter there, right? There's no way for them to weigh out what is being said and determine whether it's truth or false. So much of what gets into our children's heads at that particular time needs to be the right thing. Otherwise, we've got to deprogram and reprogram later on in their life. And after they go and move out of this theta mind frame, we have to deal in the subconscious. Essentially, 95% of the subconscious is basically complete after 7 years. And we then have to, if we want to reprogram that subconscious, we have to do it a little bit differently. It has to go through a series of repetition, which we have termed deep practice, or dedicated practice. We got into that a little bit, and we'll get into it a little bit more. Or we have to go into a state of hypnosis. So literally, they've shown if you play these self-help tapes at night, you can actually change your subconscious mind because the conscious mind is checked out, right? So that's a good way to do it. And there's a very famous episode of Friends where Chandler is listening to self-help tapes at night to try to stop smoking. But these tapes have been specifically recorded for women. And Chandler starts taking on some female traits afterwards, which is obviously hilarity ensues, as one likes to say. So yeah, very fun, very cool stuff to see. And rarely do we look at Friends and think that they are scientifically accurate. But in this case, they did well. I doubt they knew they were doing well. But anyway, it was kind of a funny show for sure. Okay, so now we've got so those children that have now moved out of this 7-year state are in a different place, and we have to deal with them differently. The very cool thing about this process of a child learning how to walk, one, it's super difficult. Learning how to walk is one of the most incredibly difficult things we will learn to do in this lifetime. Speaking is another one. And scientists have been fascinated to try to figure out how this is possible. And frankly, we don't know a whole lot about it, even with all the research has been done. But what's come out of this is just the resilience of young people and how this state of theta is so amazing. And it kind of has to be there because if the failure that one has to go through in order to learn how to walk was a part of our everyday lives, we adults would never get anything done, right? We've become so failure averse and so averse to fear that it really stifles our ability to grow and react and change and do amazing things. And one of the coolest little bits of data that kind of came out of this research as I was going through it is they did one research project where they basically watched 12-month-old to 19-month-olds, right? For a 7-month period, they watched these little toddlers learn how to walk, right? They start at 12 months. They're not real great at it. By 19 months, they've gotten a little bit better. But this whole entire time, they are trying to master the art and science of walking. And what's cool about it is in this period of time, and these are averages. So these are averages over the course of the entire 7 months of all these children, these toddlers that they were watching. On average, per hour, each one of these children would take roughly 2,400 steps, and they would fall 17 times an hour. Is that unbelievable? Can you imagine? What would you do if you fell 17 times the next hour? And I'll let you think about it for a little bit, but the answer is you would never walk again, right? You would just lay down somewhere and never try it again. 17 times to go down? Now, not to mention that, after blowing out the Achilles in my foot this week, we're a very fragile bunch, as we get older. Not like these little toddlers that can bounce right up. That is amazing to consider. But if we were not in that kind of a state, if we did not have all that encouragement, if we did not have this inability to really consciously react to what's going on, we probably would never learn to walk. So first and foremost, that's super cool. That also means that every single one of us has learned to do something that is quite extraordinary. We can walk. You don't see a lot of folks crawling around Target, right? You don't see a lot of folks just sort of laying around anywhere. We are all up, walking around, we're talking, we are somehow or another figured out how to take care of ourselves. It's truly a miracle. And every single one of us, from the very youngest all the way up, needs to see themselves as a success. We have overcome immense amounts of failure to this point in our life and have all achieved some level of success, extraordinary success. And there is nothing that would suggest that should stop now. We have a long history of being successful. And that's something that we need to communicate to our children. They need to understand that they are extraordinary. And we need to understand that they are extraordinary. And we need to understand that we are extraordinary. We have done this. This is a great big check off in one of our huge boxes. It's done. We are proficient in so many tasks that we are all super successful, right? That definition, success as a word has sort of lost meaning. Everybody has their own opinion of it. But really, it's just a matter of, have you ever succeeded? Have you ever accomplished anything in your life? And if you have, you are by definition a success. We are all successes. Are there different layers of success? Sure, perhaps. But all of that is based on opinion. Anyway, jumping back into this. Okay, why do we care so much about this? Why do we care that our children have been successful and we need to let them know that? And what have we done and what should we be worried about in this generation going forward? Well, one of the things that has come out of the research is quite troubling. One, we have kids that have, repressed or inaccurate self-image issues. A lot of that comes from social media and being on social media. We all know that social media is essentially a human highlight role. Excuse me, just one moment here. I don't know where that came from. But anyway, we have got this issue with children looking around and comparing themselves to others and having problems doing it that way. That is a problem. One, it's unrealistic, and there's nothing healthy about it. They're all looking for feedback and encouragement and all this from places where even if it comes, it's not real and it can't be depended upon. Research has also showed this young generation who is dealing with this social media backlash, this social media unhealthiness, that we've also learned that a Pew Research project done in 2015 showed us that only 19% of our millennial-aged children believe that anybody's trustworthy, that most people are trustworthy. The real problem with that means that when we don't trust other people, it really is saying more about ourselves than anything else, in that we don't trust ourselves. So we have unknowingly, in this sort of weird helicopter parenting kind of society where we have pushed our children to try to achieve so much that we've run them from soccer practice to music practice to band practice to whatever else, and we've kept them so busy and pushed them in so many different ways to try to ensure their success, to ensure that somehow or another they would be viable out there in the real world, that we have not given them the ability to learn how to trust themselves. And this has all come about because we as adults and have parents have become much more influential in letting our children know what they should do, that we know best. And that we now don't really necessarily respect their preferences. And when you don't respect their preferences and you don't give them the opportunity to choose what they want to do, they start doubting themselves as well. So while I believe we have all been trying to do the very best we can for our children, we have unknowingly created a group of people who now believe only 19% of those around them are trustworthy. Which means they probably only believe themselves to be 19% trustworthy. And unless we can trust our own abilities and trust in what we can accomplish, and unless we trust that we can be consistent and good, then there's no way for us to really be a successful entrepreneur, at least out of the gate. We're going to have to go through a lot of the school of hard knocks to get to a point where we do believe and understand and trust in ourselves. So we're talking about self-image, and we're talking about getting to a point where these people have the opportunity to explore and that we respect those decisions. So if they want to take underwater basket weaving instead of biology 407, they need to be given the right to take underwater basket weaving. It does not matter that they are not going to make any money making baskets underwater. It's going to be far more beneficial to them to have the opportunity to go out and experience underwater basket weaving and experience that they can't make money doing that and then decide to go out and look for something else. Okay. Or allowing them the opportunity to go underwater, make baskets, and realize, honestly, nobody has really done a basket this way. And if you do an underwater basket this way, you can do all kinds of extraordinary things. That would be cool too. We know where Biology 407 is going to take them. Okay. So I know it's difficult. I know it's hard as a parent. I get it. I look at my children and I want them to be successful, right? But I don't want them, I can't have them be successful on my own terms. Success has to be then reframed a little bit. We need to see success as, do they have good self-images? Do they trust in themselves and in others? And lastly, if they cannot trust and they do not trust, then we have a real difficult time helping them make connections with other people. And without these connections, without this ability to get outside themselves and make these connections and find themselves trustworthy and worth being connected to everybody else, right? If you don't trust the world, how can you connect with them? And it's this connection that makes it possible for them to become problem solvers, to care about the people they're connected to look around them and start noticing problems that they can then solve from their unique perspective, from their unique experiences. So that's sort of the concern of all of this. They need to have a very positive, healthy self-image. And it is 100% accurate that they have been extraordinarily successful every step of their life. No grade, no failure on a ball field, no messed up recital can take away their infinite worth and can take away what they've accomplished up to that point. Failure cannot be part of the self-image equation. It can only be seen as a positive step forward to becoming a better version of themselves. And then we need to allow them this ability to go out and experience and try things. Obviously, we don't want them to go and do things that could be habit forming or disastrous, drugs and alcohol and whatever else. I mean, there's a myriad of stuff out there could really damage their future. I am not one that would suggest that if we want to be good parents in that regard and we want to limit their activities to ensure their success, keep them away from habit-forming, dangerous items and allow them to explore everything else to figure out what they want to be, what they're interested in. Let them learn to trust themselves. They have shown in research then out of Harvard that kids in affluent families who have very successful parents, and these parents start to dictate the types of courses and classes and activities they should be doing so they can be successful like the parents have been successful. Or a parent's lack of success and they're trying to force their children into doing something like these tiger mothers we hear so much about, or these helicopter parents we hear so much about. That those particular kids right there are the ones who are finding themselves that trust society the least, that find themselves most isolated and feeling most alone. And unfortunately, the suicide rate in this group is increasing at a drastic rate compared to others of the same age. So we aren't doing a very good job right now. And I don't think it's because we haven't been trying. We've just been applying maybe some strategies we've heard from some experts that aren't accurate, and they are not producing the type of children that we need to be entrepreneurs and solve the world's problems going forward. Now, I want to end this little show on a very positive, cool example, a really cool note. Last night, and this is sort of a technique that I would encourage all parents to implement. And we fell into it after reading a couple books, but it's really, really cool how it works for the kids. Obviously, we want to tell our kids that we love them. We want to point out where they've been wonderful and they've been successful and make them sure that they understand that. But we need to do it in a different way. Instead of saying, hey, I love you, do this. Ask them a question. Say, hey, do you know I love you? Ask them a question. A cool thing about a question is it causes our little brains to stop and listen, because now we're being asked to maybe behave differently or do something different. So unbeknownst to the child, they have now been stopped in their tracks with a question, okay? And now it's a question where it's a leading question, okay? And leading questions are not cool in a court of law, I get it. But leading questions with children, the right leading questions with children are wonderful. So you ask the question, you know I love you, right? And you wait for their response, looking at them, make eye contact with them, right? Nod, help them. The answer will come back, yes. Not only does it feel good to you as a parent, but to them, it's a dopamine hit. To know that you are loved, and to then say it to yourself, yes, I'm loved. That, by them repeating yes, that is super powerful to the brain. It's a dopamine hit for them. The pleasure center of the brain will fire. Okay? Feels good for them. They know they're loved. What a wonderful thing to accomplish. Not only that, is we have now, most of our kids who will answer back, we've moved them out. It doesn't matter how old they are. We are now in a conscious phase, right? Past those 7 years, we are in a conscious phase to change the subconscious to those that maybe haven't felt loved. So any child out there who you love, this is a great way for them to know that they are loved, but then also reprogram subconsciously through repetition, answering yes to the question, do you know you are loved? Really cool stuff. Now, last night we had an experience with our daughter. She's super smart. I mean, she's unbelievably smart. She is so quick. Her sense of humor will knock you off your chair in laughter sometimes because it's so fast and so on and so perceptive that it's astounding, right? I mean, it literally leaves us in stitches more often than not. And sometimes it borders on cutting and maybe inappropriate, but it's hysterical. So we were laughing our heads off, but we could tell last night that our daughter was kind of not quite herself. And again, summertime's really hard for those that have super powered great brains and love to learn. Like, she thrives in school and she gobbles up every piece of information she can. She just loves it, right? It doesn't matter. It's just science, history, math. Boom, she'll just take it all in. Our boys, not so much, but she loves it. And learning makes her happy. So you get into a summertime and you've got a little mind like that's been jumping from topic to topic, and now you've got summertime and some free time and all that stuff's going on. It's hard for individuals like that. And we get it. When where our boys thrive in summertime doing all kinds of wonderful things, our little brainiac, she struggles a little bit. And so last night we could kind of see that she was struggling a little bit. And so I asked the question, I said, honey, do you know you're smart, right? And she looked at me and she said no. Came back with no. Well, then my lovely wife repeated the question. Honey, you know you're smart, right? And she again looked at her and with a little less conviction said no and shook her head. We then went on to pull out one example after another as to why she is, in fact, brilliant, right? It's easy, right? Boom, we started going through this, spelling bee, math bowl, just laid it all out, right? Homework, this, that, science project, blah, let her have it. Right? Then we asked the question again. You know you're smart, right? And with a little wry smile and pretending she was exasperated, she said yes. That is so powerful, folks. We all felt good about it. But most importantly, her taking in the question, the brain stopped and had to process it. And then her repeating back to us, yes, made her feel good. And it continued to maybe not rewire, because I think that she knows, like during the school year, she will answer yes to that question just as fast as you can get it out of your mouth, that she gets it. But it's a reinforcing question that continues to build in that neural pathway that we've talked about and wraps it in thicker myelin so she doesn't have to wonder if she's smart or not, or if she's loved or not. It's second nature. It's part of her subconscious. And that gives her the ability to connect with other people. That gives her the ability to be compassionate. That gives her what she needs to get out there and do really cool things in the world. So one last little story, and this one is a tender one for me. And I recommend everybody who happens to listen to this podcast to please go to the internet and just do a quick search for Gary and Amy, or Amy Bockerstedt. It's Bockerstette. And just do a quick search and look for a video on pgatour.com about this little episode. A little background. Amy Bockerstedt is a Special Olympian in golf. She is a little Down syndrome girl who is just full of light and life and is so joyous. She's infectious. I mean, it's just the cutest thing. I have an aunt who has passed on, who was Down syndrome. So that I realize I have a special place in my heart, and she was extraordinary at teaching us how to save her life in such a way that I didn't realize it as a child, but as you get older and look back on how she lived her life, you realize that she got it, and I don't, and I need to do a better job. Well, this little video here is so representative of how to live life and how our children need to live life that I wanted to share it with you. Definitely go out and look at it. But some of the cool things about this is, so Gary Woodland is the defending champion at the Waste Management Open in Phoenix. And as part of his duties, if you can say that, this was obviously a wonderful experience, is that he gets to do different promotional things. And this particular item was playing one hole of golf with Amy Bockerstedt from Arizona, who was a Special Olympian, and they put that all together. I don't know if it was through the Special Olympics, if it was through the PGA Tour, doesn't matter. So they show this really cute scene where they meet for the first time, and Gary gives her a hug, and he says to her, "I heard you're a good golfer." To which Amy quickly replies, I mean, lickety-split, yes. Okay, she is a good golfer. That had been ingrained in her little brain that yes, it was. There was no reason to deny it. She knew it. Okay, so they go to the first tee and they pull out this, it's a par 3. This hole is the most intimidating hole in golf. It is surrounded completely like a stadium. The stands are set up. It's the rowdiest crowd in golf. It wasn't full when they played there, but it was still full. It would make all of us fall to our knees and absolutely be scared to death. But she stepped up there. She took out her club and stepped up there, and her dad lined her up. And it was such a cool little exchange. He says to her, "Do you see the flag right in the middle of the green?" And she replies back to him, "Yes." And then he goes back to her and says, "You got this, kiddo," and pats her on the shoulder. And she replies back, "Yes, I got this." It is the cutest thing. She steps up and then hits her shot. Now, her shot is hit well. Everybody's clapping everything. But it unfortunately finds a sand trap. And for those that don't play golf, a sand trap is considered a hazard. And a sand trap is not easy for amateur golfers to get out of. It's hard to hit a golf ball out of the sand if you don't know exactly what you're doing. So they walk up to it, and you can tell that Gary and Matt Kuchar's playing with them, and the caddies are a little uncomfortable because Amy now is in this hazard, and they have no idea if she knows how to hit a golf ball out of a sand trap. So Gary asks her somewhat timidly, "Do you want to hit that?" And she says yes. And then as she's walking towards the bunker and going back in, the camera fortunately picks her up saying, "I got this. I got this." She goes in and she does a marvelous job getting the ball out on the green. And it rolls up to, I think it's about 10, 15 feet. It's a lovely shot. It's a masterful shot. And everybody is completely freaked out. Everybody, as she gets out of the sand trap and walks up onto the green, Gary hands her a putter and says, "That was awesome." And she says, "Thank you." And then the caddies come over and say, "That was amazing." And she says, "Thank you." She is so quick to say thank you. She is so quick to accept praise for something that she had just accomplished without issue. It was an amazing shot. It was okay to say thank you. She had performed it masterfully. And so she said thank you. And then she gets up to the putt, and Gary is looking at the putt with her, and he says, looks like it's moving a little left, I think, or something like that. And she agrees with him. And then he says, why don't you make this? And she says, yes, I got this. I got this. And she makes the putt. And the place goes crazy. I mean, it is so wonderful. I mean, everybody hugs her. She's giving high fives. Everybody tells her how great she did. She's answering thank you to every single one of them. It is, if it's not the coolest, it may be the coolest video of this entire year. It may be the coolest video as far as raising children, maybe ever. But it's definitely the coolest video in golf this year, without question. Because we go on to something there's a little more to the story. Well, when she gets done, she walks off the green. Her mother's there, gives her a big hug, and says, I am so proud of you. And she says, thank you, to her mom. And then her mom goes, are you happy? And she says, yes. Right? And then the very last shot is Amy walking a little bit. And I'm so glad they caught this. Her walking a little bit. And the last little word out of her mouth is, wow. Now, if that was the end of the story, it would be wonderful, but it's not. Fast forward 6 months later to Pebble Beach in Carmel or Monterey, California, where Gary Woodland, who was the defending champion who played this hole with her, is now playing in the U.S. Open. He is an accomplished golfer, but he has had a problem closing. Tournaments are typically 4 days long, and Gary Woodland 7 times previously had gone into the final day with a lead and had never finished off that lead. He'd always lost. He'd always somewhat did not perform up to what he was expecting in that final day and had never got it done. He led again after 54 holes. So the discussion from all the talking heads and the experts going into that final day was Gary Woodland probably isn't going to get this done, because he's never done it before, and now you're talking the biggest stage in golf. It's a major. There's only 4 of those a year. And if any of you have heard of Tiger Woods is known because he wins lots of majors. He's won 15 of them. So Gary Woodland is arguably going in to play the biggest round of golf in his life with a 54-hole lead, and he has never been able to hold a 54-hole lead and finish a golf tournament. So there is probably a lot that he is thinking about. But we learn after the tournament, and there's a lot of cute exchanges. He literally FaceTimes with Amy after his victory, which was a cute thing. He met with her and got to show her the trophy, which is a cute thing. They have a cute friendship. It's the coolest thing. But Gary shares with us after that when he was walking around that round of golf, he kept saying to himself, I got this. I got this. The very words he learned from Amy 6 months earlier as she talked to herself and faced literally the biggest golf challenge of her life. He learned from Amy, implemented it, and succeeded. He is the U.S. Open champion. He has his first major. And he can, in part, thank this little girl who was raised properly, had learned how to be grateful and accept praise, had learned how to be successful, had learned how to tell herself, yes, I can do this, had wonderful self-image, had complete trust, and had total connection. And she accomplished an amazing thing and inspired another person to accomplish his dream. It's cool. Very cool. Thank you for joining me for part 5 of Raising an Entrepreneur. The way we can, definitely techniques, hopefully, and strategies that we can use to help our people become happy, creative, passionate problem solvers. Show 6 is going to be really, really cool. The power of opinion and problem-solving mastery will be part 6. Until then, thank you for joining me. You as entrepreneurs are amazing people. You change the world. You are now raising a generation to take the world even further, to solve more problems, to make life better. It's what we entrepreneurs do. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it. If there's anything you heard today that you enjoyed, please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or subscribe to this podcast so you can be alerted when the next episode is available. Until then, here's to all the entrepreneurs out there. Let's go get it done.